Well, welcome everyone to the Capacity Building Institute Capacity Building Series. My name is Kristina Inrig and I'm the president of the Sustainable Capacity Foundation and thrilled to be here. We've switched the chairs today, so I will be doing the interviewing and the hosting, and our wonderful Sam Laprade will be on the hot seat for this month as well as for next month. And so as you know, we alternate between the topics of how to be an executive director and how to be a board member. If this is your first time joining us, welcome, welcome. Today we're talking about how to be an executive director. But before we jump into that conversation with Sam Laprade, I'm going to pass it over to Corey, who is going to give a presentation about the Capacity Building Institute, our host.
Awesome. Thanks for that introduction, Kristina. Again, I'm Corey and I'm an intern here at the Capacity Building Institute. If this is your first time here, I just want to do a quick overview about who we are and what programs we offer. The Capacity Building Institute was founded by Kristina Inrig, who's been involved in many nonprofit organizations since 2007. She was inspired to help build better leaders in the environmental sector in Canada. So it follows that CBI's goal is to strengthen small shop environmental organizations so that they can sustain themselves, grow, and fulfill their missions. We aim to collectivize and spread knowledge throughout the sector. CBI's vision is to train 10,000 leaders of small shop nonprofit environmental organizations in Canada within the next 10 years. While this may seem like a large goal for a small shop organization, we're actually well on our way with our 4 different training programs. The first of which is the Capacity Building Certificate Program, which is our flagship program aimed at sustainability professionals. Those with leadership experience, so managers, executive directors, and so forth. This program offers a lot of support, networking opportunities, and an in-depth overview of 6 core modules over the 6 months. These modules include financial management and fund development, governance and board development, volunteer engagement and human resources, communications and outreach, risk management and legal issues, and lastly, leadership and organizational culture. We also have our internship training program where interns are matched within a mentor, are trained, and then are placed in a local small shop environmental organization. This program is great for those who are just beginning in the sustainability sector. We also have our fundraising intensive course, our capacity series, and we are in development for an impact investment course as well. We love our testimonials, so here's a great one from Mara Shaw, who's the Executive Director of the National Farmers Union. She felt the Capacity Building Certificate Program provided her with practical tools, inspiring speakers, and one-on-one coaching that helped expand her organization's capacity. We also have some feedback from one of our interns, Ashna, who now works at Biosphere EcoCity Canada. She felt the training program gave her a better and deeper understanding of effective fundraising, grant writing, media content, partnership forming, public speaking, and youth engagement. As a whole, she felt this program taught her more about the nonprofit sector and provided her with everything required to be successful. So our 2 main programs each run 6 months and are a little bit more time intensive. So we wanted to come up with a series that was more accessible to all. Particularly, small shop nonprofit organizations struggle with support and governance, such as working efficiently with constraints like limited labor and time, helping people transition to leadership roles within environmental organizations. And we also cover how to strengthen and improve existing members' capabilities and governance structures. The series is free online and is only once a month for 1 hour. As Kristina mentioned, we alternate between 2 topics, how to be an executive director and how to be a board member. This training series is being led today by Sam Laprade, who is a certified fundraising executive who's been working in the sustainability sector for more than 28 years. She provides expertise on fund development, board relations, engagement, implementation strategies. She is also the host of the Sam Laprade Show, as well as an Hour to Give. I already mentioned some of Kristina's expertise, but her main nonprofit roles include networking, partnership development, fundraising, NGO management, and governance. Next year, we're going to be hearing from Barbara King, who is the Executive Director of Watersheds Canada. Barb has over 20 years of extensive management experience in the sector and provides training and support to other organizations on management, youth mentorship, executive leadership, and governance. Lastly, we have Alex Keenan, who in a previous career worked as legal counsel for First Nations in Ontario and Quebec. She then went on to start her own business, Stage Light Communication, which provides communication strategy, training, and facilitation for organizations and professionals. I just want to take a quick pause here and ask, what do you want to see during the Capacity series? This is our first time running this series. So if you have any feedback, you can either drop it in the Q&A chat during the Zoom webinar, or you can email your questions at info@capacitybuilding.ca. We couldn't host this event without our amazing board members or partners. And of course, our team, Hannah, me, and Sarah. If you're interested in more training events, you can visit us at capacitybuilding.ca/events. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Corey. It's great to hear all the important work of the Capacity Building Institute, but we're going to jump right into it because this topic is full and it's hard to cover in an hour. And if you had an hour with Sam Laprade, you know that there's so much you can glean out of that conversation. So Sam, welcome. Let's jump right into it. We're talking about how to be an executive director and the lens of fundraising today. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to pass it over to you to take it away for a little bit, and then we'll have some conversation. Don't forget to put your questions in the Q&A section, and we'll get to those later on in the presentation. So go ahead, Sam.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kristina. Can everyone see that?
Yeah, it's working.
Excellent. So we wanted to talk a little bit about, obviously, fundraising for executive directors, what that really means. Of course, fundraising, stewardship culture, and Kristina sort of alluded to it as well. There's just so much in that bundle. But the lens I'd love people to look through from an executive director's position are, are you changing lives and are you saving lives? I think this is a really important question to sort of ask yourself when you're doing your work, and this will help guide you. This is one of those fundamental questions we ask ourselves as nonprofits and charities, and really want to make sure that, we're really seeing that is a first lens. And when you're changing lives and saving lives, it really can become so much more. And saving lives can be humans, it could be fish, it could be, it doesn't really matter what it is. It's really about sort of the work that you're doing, and changing lives is just such an important piece. We really want to see, and you probably see this with both of them, that there's movement forward. When we think about sort of fundraising as a whole, we sort of think about fundraising in a number of different buckets, and we think about, sort of that geographical area. You're raising money, within a community, within a city, within a province, within a country. That geographical area will help dictate that. And of course, we know how challenging and how vulnerable people are in terms of their events, especially when COVID first hit. But events are a great way to raise money, not the best way to raise money, but it's important as an executive director to know that events really provide you with that friend-raising opportunity as well. But we want to make sure we have a strategy around events and not just sort of be party planners. We know, of course, direct mail, that annual giving is a really important piece. And that could be online donations as well, but it's sort of that, maybe asking 2 or 3 times a year. We know those monthly donors, especially as an executive director, you'll want to see lots of monthly donors as part of your diverse fundraising plan. And of course, major gifts, that could be over $1,000, over $10,000. That really depends on your organization. And we know how important those grants are as well, especially to environmental groups, really very, very important there. And we know capital campaigns, if you're going to be building something, a capital campaign is really crucial. And we know right at the top of the pyramid here, something called planned giving. We know that it's also referred to as legacy giving. And this is when somebody leaves a gift in their will for you. So this is an important piece in terms of the work that you do and the lens that you see. A lot of people are very surprised to find out who gives. Yes, that's right. 97% of gifts that come in this country are from individuals. So as an executive director, you want to make sure you've got your eye on that, because a lot of people think it's corporations or even foundations, but we know that the majority comes from individuals, and individuals, guess what that means? That means it's all about relationships. And as an executive director, you're really going to be seen as that role, the face of the organization in many ways. So we want to make sure that you really understand where the money's going and all the different diverse ways that hopefully you can give to your organization. We know fundraising really is about the right person asking the right prospect at the right time, for the right project, for the right amount, with the right amount of stewardship. This doesn't always mean face-to-face asks. It can mean an online ask. It can take any sort of form, but this really is, you've got the right, you're asking the right group of people, you're asking at the right time. This is a great time to raise money right now. Of course, we're just on December the 6th today. Great time to raise money, and the project has to be right. You have to have that, emotional pull, or, something that really gets people excited. Asking for the right amount is really tricky, but you get to know sort of your donors after a while. And then stewardship is so important. We can't just be asking for those monies without thanking and making sure people understand how we use those monies. Very, very shocking for many people as well. About 80% of the funds come from 20% of the donors. So this is a case where really, a lot of money is coming from your small group of people. So you want to make sure you're analyzing who's giving. You want to make sure to have a handle on that, which is so important. You also want to make sure you understand that your board is really at the core of your fundraising plan. A lot of times people give time, talent, and treasure, which means your board is giving not only their time, their great talent, but also their treasure. A lot of boards have sort of a mandatory gift, not necessarily the amount, but the fact that all boards are participating in the fundraising. It's important for various reasons. And then we know, of course, staff, or if you're working with families or volunteers, suppliers, community. So we know that all of these groups takes a piece of this fundraising effort. We know that it's hard to keep our eyes on two things: acquiring new donors and cultivating those current donors. You want to make sure you're always looking to put our focus on one and take our focus off the other. It really is a bit of a juggling act, but really encourage you to keep both of these groups in play for you. And I always show this big, beautiful birthday cake when I'm trying to describe to an executive director really what their role is and the role of the team. We think about all these different layers you require for your organization. And if we picture them like layers on a cake, we wouldn't eat this cake layer at a time, right? We would cut a big, beautiful piece of this cake. And just like the cake, we don't want to take these one at a time. We want to make sure the strategic plan really pulls into the case for support. The case for support supports the fundraising plan. The fundraising plan supports the stewardship plan. And of course, communications supports it all. So a lot of times what happens is the strategic plan might live on your computer. And if you're lucky enough to have a director of development or someone doing your fundraising, they might have the case for support in the fundraising plan, and then maybe someone else has the stewardship plan, and maybe someone else has the communications plan. And I really caution against this because all of these have to work together. So really look at the language of all of them. They might be for different audiences, but making sure you're all in line is so key. So there's lots of different ways to really assist you when you're fundraising. You want to make sure, especially as an executive director, that you're not doing transactional fundraising. We alluded to earlier about relationships and how key they are for fundraising. So you want to take your transactional fundraising to relationship fundraising. And the difference really here is transaction is just kind of that single gift, kind of a $20 go away gift. It's kind of that immediate, amount. And then the urgency is there. Just, I'll just take your $20 right now. The time period's really short, and that donor relations is low or non-existent. Where for relationships, we obviously look at that retention of donors. We look at that lifetime donor value. We look at that donor relationship as something more than just that money. And we look at that long-term opportunity, and the donor relations are high. So they might get a thank you note. They may receive a little note on the bottom of their receipt. They may get a call. They might get invited to some sort of workshop or a webinar. So there's lots of different ways to do that. But of course, as we know, culture eats strategy for breakfast every single day. So having that philanthropic culture is so, so important. So we want to remind you about how key that is. And a big part of it really comes from that core time, talent, and treasure. Is your organization really based off something like this, right? Is this something that is kind of the way your organization thinks? Which is obviously an important piece. If the main players, your board, your staff, and maybe it's just you over here going, but we're a charity, it's never going to work. You need everyone rowing the same way. And, you know, when we think about a board, we really think that they've got a duty to care, a duty of loyalty. A director, you're sort of seeing this and realizing that, you know, part of this is that time, talent, and treasure that they give, which is so, of course, important. Every fundraiser, every executive director on the planet wants your board to know a number of things. And I'm going to quickly go through a few of them for you, that they need you. An executive director needs their board, right? They need you. We need, same could be applied for donors. You know, we need you all to participate. Many of them are scared, right? Many of them are nervous. You know, we want to make sure that as an executive director that you have everything that you need. And, you know, you need the right team. You need people around you to support you. And of course, you need the right tools. You can't be driving this kind of vehicle as your CRM, for instance, right? You need to have an up-to-date system to track donations. You can't be sort of, this car is kind of the version of, you know, of a written piece of paper with things down. We need something better than that. Of course, you want that trust from your team. You want for your board and people around you to help open doors, introduce your organization to people. You know, this is a really, really important piece. And of course, they need professional development. And look what's happening tonight, right? There's some professional development here. But so often, you know, as an executive director, you're sort of putting yourself out there and then not getting refreshed and not keeping up with trends. And we want to make sure that both you and the fundraiser are doing that. And you want to make sure that, you know, you see the big picture. You want to make sure that this is an opportunity for your team and for yourself to see that big picture. And that's something where the board can assist as well. And you want to make sure that, you know, boards know that they value your time as an executive director. You know, you can't be on 24/7. So this is something really important. They want to, you know, from a board's perspective, you know, and certainly from my perspective, I've got kind of a love-hate relationship with events. And as an executive director, if you've been doing this and you've done events, you probably have a love-hate relationship with them as well. That, you know, we need the board to reach out as executive directors and fundraisers. We need the board to get in there and get their hands dirty. And we need you to also give a gift. We need you to be invested from a financial perspective as well. And we want to make sure that you have an opportunity to tell your story. We want to be in, you know, have an opportunity to hear from so many people around us in terms of what inspired you. And as executive directors, you need your story. You need to really be able to share and have the willingness to share your story as well. And we also need everybody to celebrate. You know, when there's been a great donation or a great gift, grant acceptance, or something really fantastic has happened, we want to make sure we share that. And we want to make sure that as executive directors, we're also taking risks, right? We want our boards to be open to us taking calculated risks. We want to make sure we know a great way to do things differently. So there's lots of opportunity for you know, for executive directors to kind of understand, you know, what we're doing in terms of fundraising. And one of the big parts of the work that you're going to do is to understand, you know, that donor attrition is a really big problem. It's just not your organization. You know, if you're just getting into this, you may have, you know, 100 donors or 50 donors or 1,000 donors. Know that your big job as an executive director, along with your fundraiser, is to retain all those donors, because we know retention, renewal, reactivation is all a big part of everything that you do. And we want to make sure as well, you know, everybody can kind of get that one gift from somebody, but can you get a second gift from a second gift conversion? So there's lots of different opportunities to work with, you know, with your board and with your team. But from a fundraising perspective, you know, being at the forefront of stewardship, willing to call donors and thank them, willing to embrace those things in a number of different ways, you know, reaching out, thanking your donors, showing accountability of how you raise the money and what you're going to do with those funds, those hard-working funds that you've been given, that you've got vision for new monies as well, that you have that opportunity to show that, you know, there's a future with your organization and there's new things that people can fund. And then you want to make sure that you're also getting feedback from the people around you, your donors, your board members. All these opportunities to really connect is such an important piece. So there's lots of different ways to get involved from a fundraising perspective. And, you know, Kristina and I are going to have a little chat, but we just wanted to sort of start you off with some of that fundraising executive director language, and then we can have an opportunity to answer any of the questions that you might have as well. Kristina, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. So thanks so much, Sam. I'm gonna jump into a few questions specifically related to your slide deck, and we'll keep it, you know, for people to go ahead and keep adding into the Q&A. The first thing I want to ask you about, so I'm thinking of my work as an executive director and trying to kind of come to terms with the donor pyramid and all the different ways of fundraising and how to prioritize as a fundraiser. In a small shop, you're basically the main fundraiser as the executive director. So can you give some commentary on how do we do that? How do we prioritize where to focus with the donor pyramid, where to spend our time, and how important does fundraising need to be as an executive director in our day-to-day operations?
Well, I'll start with that last question first, because I think, you know, it really depends, Kristina. Like, if you're fully dependent as an executive director, your organization is dependent on fundraising, really that's your number one job, because without the monies, then you don't have the people, you don't have the mandate. So it really needs to be. Now, some people receive some of their funding from government, some of their funding from fundraising. And then, of course, there's people that receive all of their government funding, and it's kind of nice to have fundraising. So sort of three versions there. But certainly the more money you're relying on for fundraising, the more of a responsibility it would be for the executive director to get involved. In terms of where you spend your dollars, and your time, I should say, would be to where the biggest dollars are. And that would be monthly giving. Definitely, you know, monitoring that. How many monthly donors do we have? Do we have a campaign? You know, what's a good number for an organization our size? And from all accounts, from every workshop that I've been in about fundraising, they say if you can get to 10% of your donor database, then you've got a great fundraising plan in terms of your monthly giving. The other place I would spend a lot of time would be with your major gift donors. So that would be an opportunity to, you know, connect with people. If you have something to tour them or you have something like that, then you would be a big part of the opportunity to connect with donors on a major gift perspective. And then, of course, making sure that all of those are available. And I'll give you a really small example, as I have a very small organization that I work with as part of my consultancy. And we had put an option on their website that they could receive monies from securities, so donations. And they had them accepted through Canada Helps, which means Canada Helps are selling them. They do kind of all that work and they take a percentage. Well, it had been up there for about 3 weeks and they got a call and they said, Sam, someone wants to donate securities. So I think it's really important that you show the world, if you will, show your constituents, whoever sort of what geographical area you're in, that you're willing to accept all of these diverse ways of giving. And then just in terms of your fundraising plan, focus on a couple that are most comfortable for you. If you're, sort of not comfortable having one-on-one conversations with donors, then maybe you're best served to do stewardship, that type of thing in terms of thanking donors. Every executive director should be at a place at some point in their career where they're prepared to ask for money. It really is an important piece, but not everyone's comfortable at the beginning, and that's okay.
And that was actually where I was going to go next, Sam, was around this idea of like starting off as an ED or starting off as a fundraiser. I know for me, and it's been almost 20 years since I started as an executive director of a small shop, environmental group, but I had never asked for money before. And I was really nervous about it and I didn't know how. And I can definitely say that on this side of the table, having done it now for many years, I'm a lot more confident and I'm a lot more able to do it. But what is your recommendation for people who are just getting started or who just have tried really hard not to ask for money and they realize now they have to? What can they do to get more comfortable?
You know what? It's, I think probably one of the biggest things, we didn't have time to go through it today, but one of the things that really helped a lot of people that I work with is there's a little book, and it was written by Harvey McKinnon, who's a Canadian, and he wrote a little book called 11 Questions That Donors Ask. And I find once you read that book, and you sort of understand that donors also want to give. I think there's this perception that donors, you're always strong arming them for the money. If you're strong arming anybody, they're not your person, right? And goes back to sort of that one that I sent where I talked about right person, right prospect, right project. If you're strong arming somebody for $100, they're not going to give a second time. So you want the joy to be both receiving and the giving. So learning sort of that you can actually bring donors a lot of joy by giving them opportunities to give. I think if you shift your mindset, I think a lot of us feel like, and I'll put up my hand and say, I felt like this too. You kind of feel like a bit of a used car salesman. But when you really believe in what you're doing, it's not so much that you're getting someone's money, but you're also getting someone's passion. And sometimes that $100 gift comes with more compassion than the $100,000 gift. But if you can continue to inspire donors, I remember it was a long time ago, maybe 2012, 2013, something like that. I sat and heard Bishop Desmond Tutu speak. And he talked about how this was a big Association of Fundraising Professionals conference. And it just by fluke, I ended up in front row. Not that I had any reason to be there. I was running a bit late and they needed people to go up front. And all of a sudden I found myself in the front row. And he said, fundraising is a noble profession. And I remember it closing the gap for me between 98% being proud of what I do to 100% being proud. I always had this 2% where I was a bit afraid to say, what I did, like, oh, I'm a fundraiser. And, because people would be like, well, I don't have any money if you met them at a cocktail party or something. And so for me, it was, I'm just proud to be a fundraiser, and I don't want your $20 or your $200 unless you believe also in what we're doing.
And so I think that comes back to this point of belief and passion, because if you as the asker are not passionate about what you do, if you're not excited, how can you expect, the people that you meet out there to be excited? So for me, one of the biggest things is like, get clear on why you work as the executive director of this organization, and get clear on what makes you feel inspired to be part of this cause, because you're giving your hours away, whether it's paid hours or volunteer hours. It doesn't matter. For a small shop, you're always going to be working a lot more than what you're paid, even if you're paid at all. So I guess I just want to emphasize how important that passion has to be on the ED side, because doesn't it shine through, Sam? Like when you're, hearing from the EDs you've worked with, right? You can tell if they love their work or not.
Yeah, you absolutely can. And, arm yourself with as many stories, like authentic stories that you can share as possible. Because yes, of course, you know, we want to know you served 1,500 people this year, or you did whatever in terms of numbers, but it's the anecdotes. It's, you know, sharing with somebody that somebody walked through the doors of your place, or they, you know, contacted you and they wanted to see something done and you took it to the next level. They want those anecdotes. So arm yourself, be the best storyteller in your shop.
And then again, that comes back to this comment about relationships, that it's all about relationships. And so, you know, if we think of this ask as the beginning of a relationship, it's the start of a number of conversations. So it's not as if like you have to hype it all up into this one big deal. Ideally, you're going to have an ongoing relationship with your donors, especially those 20% that are giving regularly. So, and by the way, this includes grant providers and foundations and people that you're seeking funding from. It's individuals, but it's also for the environmental sector. Grants are just such a huge chunk of it, right? So it includes those relationships.
100%. Such a good point. I think a lot of people think that, you know, there's, I don't know, there's, you know, robots looking at these grant applications, but they are real people as well. They're looking to be inspired, and they're also looking to be thanked. And I think a big mistake people make is they don't actually fulfill and thank the donors that are the grantors.
Great. Well, let's go to one of the questions that's come in, and please keep them coming. And again, this is kind of like ask Sam Laprade anything about fundraising from an ED's point of view. So please feel free to put in whatever questions that you have. But this is a great question from Rob Barnes, and he asks, and again, thinking about how, you know, many of us in small shops, we are the only fundraiser. We are sometimes the only staff member or the main volunteer. And so Rob says, what do you look for before recommending the addition of a development officer, basically a fundraising lead for the organization, a paid position? Are you looking at the strength of the list, the size of the list, the level of annual revenues, clarity of mission, organizational culture, or something else? For example, is there an obvious threshold beyond which an organization should start considering this? And that is a great question, because for small shops, when do we want to add help? When, as the ED, is it time for us to get help?
Mm-hmm. Brilliant question, Rob. And I would say, you know, your list there is great. I would add a few things to it. The strength of the list is that, you know, not only the capacity that would be into your donor base. I would definitely suggest that you're using some sort of CRM, that you're sort of past the stage of an Excel spreadsheet or, you know, notes written in someone's notebook. You know, definitely from that perspective. Level of annual revenues, I think you need to be at a point where you can afford the fundraiser, because this is the long game. Fundraising is a sport. A team sport, not a one-man show, or a one-person show. You do not think that you can put a fundraiser in a cubicle or, you know, in their home office and have the money come out through the door. I mean, the bottom line is, it is something where it takes some patience to raise some money. It takes, you know, a big part of it. I would say a big part of, you know, are you ready is your strategic plan. Are you prepared in your strategic plan to have a fundraiser? And, you know, culture, you've got culture here, the clarity of mission. I would say at least a draft of a case for support is key. The culture is one of the biggest things. I went and worked for an organization. I was only there for 3 years. They just never sort of got that philanthropic culture piece. And that can be, honestly, I hate using this word, but sort of a cancer within your organization if people are not backing the philanthropic, you know, stuff. That can be very, very, very challenging. And I'll add to this list as well, board readiness. The board has to be ready. If you as an executive director are like, okay, we're ready for a fundraiser, and the board's like, no, you're not. Well, you are setting that fundraiser up for absolute, you know, an unsuccessful time at your place, because you really rely on the board to help with so much. The other thing too is, you know, and you don't have to have all these perfect, but to have some policies in place, a gift acceptance policy, You know, even just, you know, are we going to accept, would you accept from a cannabis company? Would you accept from an alcohol company? Which, you know, what gifts would we accept and which gifts would we say no to? So there's a few things like that. And then I would also say, you know, do you have a great story to tell? Because if you don't have a great story to tell, and, you know, maybe your mission is, I don't know, doing something that isn't going to sort of hit your, you know, hit the hearts of people, you need to have that story done. And it kind of goes hand in hand with your case for support and what you say here about your clarity of mission. But if it's not reflected in your strategic plan, going back to that big, beautiful cake I had there, then you're sort of setting yourself up for a bit of a disappointment as well, because fundraisers, unfortunately, they turn over about every 18 months to 2 years if they're not supported. And good fundraisers are very hard to come by. There's a handful of really great fundraisers in this city. And there's lots of people that, you know, sort of say they're fundraisers and I don't know what they do. But so you have to really have an opportunity to, you know, to give them that solid strategic plan, because we hope with the strategic plan that annually you would be reviewing that and making sure fund development is a big part of that. So I could go on about, I think this actually could be a whole webinar, to be honest with you.
Well, you know, what I'm thinking about is that some people, when they are starting up as a small shop and they have an ED, whether it's part-time or full-time, they'll often think, man, the fundraising is the hardest part, it sucks. Or it's like, this is challenging. So so then they want to hire a fundraiser second. And actually, I think it's not the second person you hire, actually, because I think you're hiring a lot of program staff, possibly interns, possibly communications team. The fundraiser is like, you know, several, you know, HR positions down the list in terms of how you would hire them. And I've been giving a lot of thought in terms of the work that I do for capacity building. And I take groups from really small, like $0 budget, or like when I started at Tucker House, we had a $30,000 a year budget, and I moved them up to about a $300,000 to $400,000 budget. That's kind of the area with small shops that I've worked really well in. So going from 0 or 1 staff up to 3 to 4 staff, and generally within that budget range, none of the groups are ready yet to have a fundraiser. So I'm not saying that's a set in stone position, but by the time they reach $300,000, $350,000, they maybe have finally a paid ED full time. They maybe have 1 or 2 program staff. So so I guess I just wanted to say from my perspective that it's definitely not the first person you hire, and it definitely, you have to be stable enough. And as you mentioned, have that CRM and these systems in place. Would you agree?
Absolutely, 100%. And I think the comms, what you would, I mean, obviously program staff for sure, but from a communications perspective, because so often the fundraiser ends up becoming the communications person. And then they wonder at the end of the year why there's no revenue or limited revenue beside the fundraiser. But when we look back on their work plan, it's a lot of, they're doing a lot of comms.
Yeah. And the fact of the matter is, you know, you can't, even when you do hire a fundraiser, you're never getting rid of fundraising. As an ED, if you don't like fundraising, you're probably not going to be able to stay as an ED long term, because it's always going to be an important part of your job, even after you hire a fundraising officer. And frankly, you know, you want to build that spirit of philanthropy within the whole organization. So you want it to be a team sport, but as the ED, you're always going to have a significant role, especially for a small shop. I love this next question because you know, our next session is going to be focused on boards. And of course, just a little, you know, pro tip, if you can get your board of director members to the January 17th session, it's going to be a little bit later because of the new year, Monday, January 17th at 6 p.m. This is one of the opportunities for professional development for your board. So I really encourage you to bring your boards out to the January session, because it's all about fundraising. But the question from Aida is, would you tell us more about board readiness? What are some of the readiness parameters?
Absolutely a great question, by the way. Board readiness is, are you willing to, is the board willing to, step up and open doors? Are they willing to introduce you to their networks? Are they willing to make stewardship calls? Are they willing to be, part of the fundraising? Are they willing to, review cases for support and find out if that's where your organization is going? I think part of it for me is also from that culture perspective. Is your board going to support you when it comes to you coming and saying, okay, we're going to have a campaign, and if all of them are like, well, we're not going to give to that, they're not ready. And there are probably 15 books written on board readiness. So there's lots of different literature that you can that you can read that has been written about board readiness, because it is such an important piece. And one of the books that I always recommend to people, unfortunately, she passed away recently this year, but a woman by the name of Simone Joet, she wrote a book called Firing Lousy Board Members. And it's sort of a cheeky title, but it really gets down to, if your board isn't ready, then you may need to shift your board members. And I think another big part, the biggest part I can say, and I'm going through this with an organization that I work with, is, do you have terms of reference for your board? Is your board there for 2-3 year terms? If you have a board there that is, they've been there since Jesus was a choir boy and they're going to be there until, the end of time, then, that's probably not going to work for you in terms of board readiness. You typically need, that fresh blood to be coming into your world of fundraising. A fundraising committee is also a great way to sort of test out board readiness. If you say to the board, if we had a fundraising committee, would you want to be in it? And nobody puts up their hand and they're all looking at the ceiling, you're probably not ready.
And I think there's another side of readiness, and that's ED readiness. Like you as the ED being ready to take a leadership role in fundraising. And for me, what happened in my career with being an executive director was I went from kind of dreading fundraising to really finding the fun in fundraising and loving that part of the work. And I know that not all EDs are there yet. So, before we go to the next question, Sam, I just wonder, what can you say to those people who are just kind of like, this is a dreaded part of their job?
Yeah. You know what? I'll be honest with you, even as someone that's been fundraising for 30 years, there are parts of it I don't like either. Right. So I think there's, if there's a job where you love 100% of it, I think it's pretty rare. So when it comes to, fundraising, I think you really need to see that you're almost, if you picture sort of a blank foundation, and everything you do for fundraising, whether it be thank a donor, ask a donor, anything like that, work with your board on it. If you picture that each one of those is a block, and that in 2031, the things you're doing in 2021 will help move that organization forward. And in a decade from now, you're going to see all that hard work become something that you've built. That helps me get through the days where I'm like, really, I've got to do the board minutes, or, really, I've got to pull another metrics list, or, all of those things, because I truly believe, like a lot of things, fundraising is like an iceberg. At the very tip of it, you see all the good stuff. But there's 5 times as much deep. That's the not fun stuff, and the stuff that has to happen to keep this part alive.
Absolutely. Okay, we're going to hear a word from our sponsor in just a moment. But before we do, there's a quick question here from Catherine. It says, how effective do you think Giving Tuesday is in generating funds?
Well, Catherine, I feel like you were with me about an hour ago, because one of my clients phoned me to say last year they did $28,000 on Giving Tuesday, and this year they did $48,000 on Giving Tuesday. So I think it's growing every year. I think it's not something where you can put out one post on Giving Tuesday morning, expect the money to come in. I think it's really become, although we call it Giving Tuesday, I really think it's giving the month of November. So I think you have to start on November 1st saying, or whatever the date, you know, what landed November 30th this year. But it's really that opportunity for you to share that message, be inspiring through that month, and all leads to that day, and then do the stewardship behind all the Giving Tuesday. But it's really, really important to know that it's just not that day. So it has been effective. $2.4 billion was raised globally. And some people got nothing and some people got a lot.
And then for others, the month of December is really a key month for
Huge.
giving. So it really helps kickstart that side of it as well.
Hey, Sophie Lamb, can I just say Sophie Lamb, who I love because I get to see her at least once a month, is making my whole day by saying she got her first monthly donor on Giving Tuesday.
Great job, Sophie and NSCN. That is awesome. Okay, we're going to hear, we may have time for some more questions, but we're going to hear from our sponsor, which is ECO Executive Director. So I just want to check if Ked is here and ready to present. I actually have the slide deck, Ked, so I'm going to pull it up. But are you there and available?
Yes, Kristina.
Okay, so go for it. Welcome.
Welcome. Okay.
I have the slides up for you. You're welcome to turn on your camera. It's up to you.
Okay, I try, but I see it's closed. Okay, no problem. My name is Janet Neptune. I'm the Deputy Director at Sustainable Eastern Ontario, and I'm going to present you the ECO Executive Director to say who we are, what we do, and how we can help. And what we are to see today, it's about our organization, our partners, board of directors, problem and solutions, a model, pilot model, and ECO executive roles. After that, it's working together for protecting growth. Okay, ECO Executive Director is a social enterprise that helps small shop nonprofit environmental organization across Canada who need administrative support for the executive director functions. Our partners, we got Sustainable Eastern Ontario, Green Books, ECO Internship, and Capacity Building Institute. Board of Directors, we got 5 members at this board. It's Corinne Arrigo, Chair, Emma Roy, Vice Chair, Amina Hatta, Treasurer, Chantal Haig, Secretary, and Martin Nesbeth, Member at Large. Which organization we are interested in or who face those problems? Like struggling to manage their small shop, NGO, or don't want to spend hard-earned staff dollars on administrative tasks and can't afford to cover the salary of a full-time ED. Solutions. We help, the ECO Executive Director will help with financial management and fund development, governance and board development, volunteer engagement and human resources, communication and outreach, risk management and legal issues, and leadership and organizational culture. Pilot model. We are currently running out our pilot model with 5 small shop NGOs based in Eastern Ontario who were willing to allow us to try out our model by creating a shared ED position among them. Like we said, we are at the end of the pilot model. We was started 3 months ago. September to December 21st. And now our goal is to developing model as we go. Okay, the role, what is the ECO Executive Director roles? In accordance with the mission of the Board of Directors, the ECO ED will provide professional leadership and overall management of the day-to-day operations and program.
Maybe for this slide, Ken, we can just encourage people to check out the website and see the different responsibilities. And basically learn more about what, and basically it's a shared ED that's shared among the organizations.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, well, working together, let's say working together with your team, as we know your staff know the organization better than we do. Like collaboration, we will have 3 pillars. It's collaboration approach, priority areas, and things we help you do. Like collaboration, we will sit down with senior staff and identify areas that we can take off your load. We won't change anything, anything that we are working well within your organization. Build on the strengths of the team you have built and act as more of a background function. Okay, projected. Our goal is to recruit 100 executive directors for the next 10 years, from 22 to 32. And have almost or more 500 small shop organizations. If you are interested in the ECO Executive Director, you can contact Kristina Inrig or Jessica Leger. And go on our website to have more information and to have the email address and everything. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ked. So I really appreciate the involvement of ECO Executive Director in the session today. And for sure, you know, when you're looking at ED functions, small shops are not always able to afford to pay for a central ED. And so we've piloted this new model called ECO Executive Director. And Ked is one of our ECO Executive Directors. He specializes in the Francophone community. So we do have the capacity to reach out in that area. And then we have 5 ECO Executive Directors who are ready to roll in January, working with organizations based on our pilot that we did in Eastern Ontario. And so we now have groups signed up from across the country, and we're looking to sign on if more organizations that are interested. We often do a pilot stage where we kind of get to know you and you get to know us, and look at what the capacity needs are of the organization, obviously not wanting to overlap with any skills or resources that already exist. And this can be a really great solution for really small organizations that have very strong program staff, but maybe don't have that administrative functions dealt with. And so I just want to encourage you, if you're interested, to look into it, ecoexecutivedirector.ca. Jessica Leger will be happy to meet with you and talk about how this could work. Or if you're en français, vous pouvez rencontrer avec Ked Neptune pour plusieurs informations au sujet de ECO Executive Director. So Sam, with a shared ED, you can imagine it's probably challenging to do fundraising, but one of the advantages is sometimes you get to have some shared learnings and also be able to like execute grants across multiple organizations, which can be helpful.
I definitely see, I see the good and the challenging in there for sure. And no, I think it's great. And I've worked with an organization that had shared an executive director. So there definitely are some good things there. I think always at the core of it, ensuring that your board, whoever is just in line with what you're actually going to do with the money. I mean, that's such an important piece, no matter if you're a shared ED or not. I mean, I think knowing where those monies are going to go is really important. And I say that, and it seems like a really rudimentary part of fundraising, but I have to tell you, I mean, I've worked with lots of groups that, you know, they work really hard to get a consultant in there, and I get in there and I'm like, what are you going to, you know, what do you use the money for? And they're all looking at each other like, oh, I don't know what we use the money for. So, you know, being aligned is really important.
So knowing, it sounds to me that like making sure there's alignment across the team, sure. Not just around stories, but around, you know, how funds will be used and really direct examples is going to be a really important part of fundraising.
100%, really, really important. And, you know, it's something people struggle with, and it's not a document that you write once and forget it. It's something I always suggest, you know, that you use either, you know, the first board meeting of the year or the last board member of the year or something like that. So it's, you know, annually you're looking at your strategic plan, where you're aligned, where the money's going, look back of how you spent the other money, accountability, especially for those grants, which is a really good point that you just brought up, right? You have to do those, you know, those reports for how you use the money, and you have to make sure they're aligned. So, so that would be a big piece of advice I would have there is you know, to make sure that you do an assessment, and that at least annually you're looking at how you raise the money.
And I'm thinking back to your birthday cake, and maybe it's because I'm hungry and I really love that birthday cake picture, but you know, what's the first bite? What, I know that in an ideal world, you get this rainbow piece that has a slice of each of those categories, but should people be focusing on making sure they have a strong strategic plan and then moving to the case for support? What is your recommendation to just sort of start off?
It's exactly how the layers went. So it's strategic plan, case for support, fundraising, stewardship, and comms that would oversee it all. And, you know, a lot of times people have something in place before they have something else in place. That's okay too. But, you know, I can't tell you how many times I look at the annual report and I look at the strategic plan and I think those two don't even look like they belong to the same organization. So that's where I kind of came up with, remember one time I was going to be doing a presentation. I was trying to come up with a visual of where you would want a little bit of everything. And so that's where it came from. But, you know, and they're all not going to be perfect. And you've heard me say this time and time again, Kristina, just have one piece of paper on each of those at minimum, just one, to help guide you. And it comes back to that whole analogy, you know, it's better no memory than faded paper, right? I'm not saying that the right way, but, you know, you'd rather have something on paper than nothing.
Yeah, and I think that's the important thing coming back to it, because a lot of people, when they think of these plans, they think like 20-page, 30-page documents. And what you're saying is start simple, start with one page, because as an ED, you're always feeling like you're balancing more than you can possibly handle. And so how can we make this more manageable for us? And that would be one way. Are there any other kind of final tips you have to really kind of help spur some of our EDs on?
I'll tell you the number one tip that I have for any executive director is to be gentle with yourself and to be kind to yourself. You are not going to get it all done. And that's why it's called work and not done, right? It's not all going to get done. It's called work because the work goes into the next day and the next day and the next day. But pick and choose something every day from a fundraising perspective, even if it's one call to a donor. But try to take every single day and do something for fundraising. And then it becomes almost, you know, a habit or something you look forward to. And if you know, that little stool I had up with the 4 legs, you know, if you get to a point where you're listening to the donor and they'll start to inspire you back, and that's that je ne sais quoi.
And yeah, I was just thinking like the thanking piece, that can be such an important part of your day. And sometimes it's the last thing we do. What if we made it the first thing we did this holiday season and we actually thanked all of our donors, made a phone call, sent them a holiday card, and just really encouraged and appreciated the people around us? That can go a really long way.
And another great thing that I get all my clients to do is 2 times a year, February and October, pull all your people in. February is a great time to do it. A little Valentine's thank you. So, you know, get your people to whether it be your staff, your board, to thank, you know, 5 donors each. And then just before Thanksgiving, we're thinking about you. We're giving thanks for you. You're heading into that giving season, which maybe even just help your retention as well. So, and of course, right now is a great time to thank too.
Thank you so much, Sam. Speaking of thanking, and it is 5 o'clock. It is time to finish. We try to keep it to 1 hour in your day, and we'll be back on January 17th. Just note the different time because it's a little later in the month, and try to get your board members out to the session because it's really going to be an encouragement, and we'll hear from Sam Laprade about how to encourage your board members to be involved in fundraising. See everybody in the new year.
Bye.
Take care.